What do these games have in common?
They're games that I love, but just haven't completed. I spend hours grinding, leveling up, looking for the best loot for each game's ultimate showdown, and then bam, nothing. I never finish the final boss fight. Life just moves on. A new game, a new obsession, but it's always the same story. It's final boss fatigue, end game burnout, last level syndrome, completion avoidance. Call it what you want, it's a million things. But why do I keep on doing this? And with so many games that I love. The journey is incredible. The mechanics, the fights, the story, they all pull me in every time, and yet I trickle off at the end, either grinding for a few more levels, searching for more loot, or finding an excuse to delay that final showdown. It's not just a feeling, it's a pattern that's laid out in front of me. Games that I bought with the promise to play eventually, the rare few where I've actually defeated the final boss, and the ones I started but couldn't finish. And of course, those I bought knowing deep down I'd probably never complete. But today, that all changes. I'm not jumping into a new game until I finish the ones that I've started, the ones that I've left behind. It's redemption time. It's finally time to close a chapter.
I know these games are kind of old, but fair warning, there might be spoilers if you have not played this yet.
We're starting off the journey strong with Tales of Arise. There's a huge problem though, just starting my journey. Playing Tales of Arise, I'm literally, if not at the last dungeon, last level, last boss. I gotta do some more mini bosses, and then it's the final boss. I have to relearn the game mechanics, the battle mechanics, all the combos, before the final boss fight. I'm level 75 all around, all my characters. I'm definitely gonna have to take some time to relearn the controls, and that's what's gonna be the challenge of all these games, is relearning all the controls, all the mechanics, all the combos, and then beating the final boss.
So jumping into it, I thought I'd struggle with the boss and the controls, but luckily for me, I played enough Tales games that getting back into attacking, using arts, and dodging wasn't too hard. I switched over from Kisara to Alphen since I knew he'd be my main for the final boss fight. However, I was expecting to get dunked on, but my younger self, who grinded up to level 75, had me set up perfectly. The level 60-something boss didn't stand a chance. It was basically a walk in the park with a classic cheesy anime ending to close out my first game. The second game I tackled was Horizon Forbidden West, and I thought it would be an easy walk in the park like Arise, but I could have not been more wrong. The mechanics and battles in this game made me want to pull my hair out. Aside from the amazing 4K graphics and scenery, hearing Commander Zavala's voice as Silence, voiced by the late Lance Reddick, hit me hard. Rest in peace, legend. But man, this game didn't hold back. I got my ass handed to me, not just by the boss fights, but by the normal enemies like the Spectres. I had to reread the battle basics and grind through try after try to beat the first mini boss, and the final boss took even longer. But in the end, what an amazing payoff. That ending was worth the struggle. The third game on my list is Trials of Mana for the Switch. I thought I could play outside, but the sun's rays shriveled me away. Luckily, being on the Switch, this one was simple and easy. I could be mobile and play anywhere. I spent most of my time gaming in bed, either using a boom arm with a phone holder for the Switch, or docking it and streaming the gameplay to the TV on my ceiling for some chill vibes. I thought it would take longer, but I cleared most of it during a car ride to a football game, then finished off the boss when I got home. Another one done, and I went to bed knowing that the final boss was defeated. This next one, Final Fantasy XVI, a game that took me on an emotional roller coaster like no other, something I haven't felt from a video game in a long time. We're at the halfway point in my journey, and completing Final Fantasy XVI was a major milestone. Out of all the games I'm finishing, this one is the most recent, so I knew the story and battle mechanics well. This was the game I didn't want to finish. I wanted to grind, collect all the gear, and experience every side quest and story it had to offer. But I knew I had to push forward. The fights were fun, and experimenting with the different icons and moves was a creative joy. The story matured so quickly in the final hours, romantic, emotional, and all-consuming. The boss fights weren't as difficult as I expected, but the emotions leading up to and after defeating the final boss fights were overwhelming. As the final scenes unfolded after the boss fight, I had to remind myself to breathe through the tears. The ending left me feeling both complete and empty, just like finishing Clannad or Angel Beats for the first time. Beating the final boss gave me a sense of closure I haven't felt in a long time, and I know the next few games on the list won't match this one.
What a great fucking game. Wow, what an amazing story. I love the battle mechanics. Holy shit, that was great. That's going up there.
My fifth game was Tales of Berseria, and man, was it a challenge, even before I got to the final boss. The first hurdle was just getting the game to load. My old PS4 wouldn't handle the cosmetic add-ons, so I had to update the system, log back in, download all the items from the PS Store, and finally, I could load my save data. And once I was in, I realized I was at the final level and the final boss, and I could barely make a dent. I didn't remember the mechanics at all. This game wasn't like the other Tales games that I played. I had to YouTube a short guide just to get back into the flow. This wasn't like Horizon where I just had to relearn things. This game is 8 years old. I went into the final battle with zero memory. I had to travel back to town to buy better gear and stock up on revives. And then beating the boss finally made me regret not finishing this back then. I barely remember the story, and the ending felt hollow. I could have had such a better experience if I had seen it through when it was fresh. It didn't hit like Final Fantasy XVI, but I'm glad I had this one checked off. The second to last game, Final Fantasy VII Remake. This one hit close to home because Final Fantasy VII was the first RPG I've ever played. It's the game that introduced me to the world of Final Fantasy and JRPGs. I first discovered it at a friend's house after elementary school. His older brother owned the game and we were able to play it together. My friend controlled the game while I watched and helped him choose fight options during the battles. But I didn't fully understand the story until I played it again years later on my own PS2. Finishing Final Fantasy VII Remake was incredible. The updates with the Whisperers and the changes to Destiny were brilliant. And though the final boss wasn't as tough as I expected, Rufus actually gave me more trouble. It was still a super cool ending. I definitely wanted to wait and get all the cool gear before finishing it, but now that it's done, I can finally look forward to Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I've finally arrived at the last game in my journey. Finishing all these games wasn't an easy task, and getting back into the story and battle mechanics took effort. Luckily, just like Final Fantasy VII Remake, I absolutely loved Crisis Core back when I was playing it on the PSP. I vividly remember playing it on like a woven wooden couch wrapped in a Mickey Mouse blanket during school. It was an amazing experience back then, and now with this remake, it feels like a great refresher. The graphics felt a little rough compared to Final Fantasy VII Remake on the PS4, but I enjoyed the battles even more this time around. The materia fusion was fun, and I made some quick changes before taking on the final boss. The jump materia was a game changer. Dodging attacks, dealing damage, and taking out the boss's ability gauge made the fight almost too easy. Out of all the games, this final boss felt the simplest thanks to my earlier battles and relearning the controls. And at just under 11 hours, starting right before leaving Midgar, I think that was chapter 7, this was a quick but satisfying finish. It feels like a fitting, relaxed end to a journey that's taken me through so many great stories and battles. So after all this time, I've finally completed the 7 games that have been sitting unfinished for years. It wasn't easy, but it was worth every battle, every boss, and every story I finally got to see through. Looking back, I realized that it's not just about defeating bosses, it was about finishing what I had started and rediscovering why I loved these games in the first place. Now, with all these games finally complete, I'm ready for whatever new adventures come next. Peace.